This is the Toss-Up, where an expert-lined panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention. It's all right here on the Toss-Up. After years of subpar performances and living at or near the bottom of the Big Ten, the IU volleyball program developed a reputation. It was bad. They couldn't win. They couldn't draw a crowd. In 2017, they hit rock bottom, winning one conference game. One! Like, that's less than two, but more than zero. They also went on a mind-boggling run where they got swept in 8 straight matches. They lost 24 straight sets. So where did they go from there? Up, of course. There wasn't much room to go down. Steve Aird has breathed a new life into this program. They're sitting 5 games over 500 with just a month left in the season. And if they win any of their final 6 games, they'll have won more games in the Big Ten than any Hoosier squad since 2010. That year, the Cream and Crimson won 9 conference matchups and made their first and only Sweet 16 in program history. Now, there's a bit of NCAA tourney talk around this year's team. Will they make it? We won't know for a while, but just the fact that they're in the conversation is astounding. Hey there, everybody. I'm Austin Matricardi, standing in for Michael Dugan this week. Joining me on the show to talk all things IUVB, we've got the IUSTV volleyball reporter, Matt Cohen, IDS volleyball reporter, Stefan Kreishnik, and WIUX broadcaster, Jack Grossman. We've got the whole alphabet in here this week. Gentlemen, are we ready?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
In a moment, we'll look at this team at a smaller level, but just at the macro scale, how can you put into words this team's improvement from last year, Matt?
I mean, it's incredible, and you talked about this. It's, this team won 1 game last season. To go from winning 1 game to now being in NCAA tournament talk, and really, you got a small freshman class in it, and with a new coach. What Steve Aird has done with this program, and he's talked a lot about how it's going to take some time to rebuild, and this is year 0, he's said many times, but I don't think any of us, including him, expected them to be anywhere close to where they are right now. It's been, really an incredible turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even put it into words, especially when you look at the beginning of the season, talking to Aird and stuff like that. It didn't seem like he really believed that this team would be in NCAA tournament contention. I mean, now talking to him, when we talk about a 5-set match like the one they lost at Purdue, we mentioned, why wasn't the team able to pull it off? And he laughs because a few months ago, we wouldn't even consider them to be five sets with Purdue. So the fact that they're even where they are right now, competing with top 15 teams in the nation, I mean, beating top 15 teams like Michigan, it's just astounding when you look at where they were last season and going into this season, or even at the beginning of this season, because Eric keeps saying that where they are now is much better than where they were in that first tournament at Vegas, let alone where they were last year. So it's just awesome to see how this team is developing as the year goes on and how they're all buying into Steve Aird's system.
And the fact that they've done it while losing arguably their best player in Kendall Bierman for over a month makes it even more astounding what they've been able to do. This team is leaps and bounds better than it was even a month ago, and they've been improving exponentially so far this season, and to the point where with still 6 games left in the Big Ten slate, they've already won 5 more conference games than they did all last season. That was unthinkable at the beginning of the season, and now they have a chance to build on that even more moving forward.
Jack, right back to you. We've seen a lot of improvement this year. What or who has been the driving force behind that improvement?
There's been a lot of different pieces. Deja Lofton up front's been a huge part of it. She's second on the team in kills, leads the team in hitting percentage with .343. She's incredibly efficient with how she gets her kills. She gets them in many different ways, a lot of them off of blocks, some off of sets. And she's been really, really dominant for the Hoosiers and really a key cog in the middle for them.
Yeah, I would say the Hoosiers defense as a whole. I mean, mentioning Deja Lofton in the middle, you got Hayden Hubers, Lexi Johnson, and in the back you got Bailey Lebo at libero, going along with Megan Kors, who's gotten some playing time recently. I mean, that defense has just gotten so much better. And in the Big Ten, you're going up against some great outside hitters. I mean, from Minnesota to Wisconsin, Nebraska, these are teams that are absolutely stacked with outside hitters. So to be able to have a defense kind of shut these people down, at least for stretches, to make the game competitive is huge. So I would definitely say that the defense has been a driving force of this team.
I think Steve Aird, honestly, is a real answer to this question, is the driving force of this turnaround. Is the roster, for the most part, is pretty similar to what it was last season. But then you look at the biggest change from last year, and it's the coaching. Steve Aird's bred a new life into this program. He's brought crowds we haven't seen in the past years. The way he trains seems to be really different from what we've seen in the past with this team. He's just so hardcore with it all the time, always talking about, going full throttle with everything. He said he's the same speed for everyone, including media, one day even at a press conference. I mean, I think he's really the biggest reason for this turnaround.
And we mentioned this a little bit earlier. There's a little bit of NCAA tournament talk. What's the postseason outlook for the Hoosiers at the moment, Matt?
So I hate to be a pessimist, especially after I was the optimist the first time we talked about volleyball on this show, but I think with the schedule they have left, it's going to be difficult. They have back-to-back games starting tomorrow, on Friday night against at number 3 Minnesota, and they have at number 8 Wisconsin, both road games. And they come back to Bloomington, they get Iowa, and then 2 more top 15 teams in Nebraska and in Purdue. So if you assume they win maybe one of those games, and even winning one of those games would be incredible for this team because they've only beaten one ranked team all season long. So then they still get some of the best coming up in the next few games. So I would say it'd be hard for them because they have, I would think, 4 more losses coming up. But if they can, improve their tournament resume and get maybe an upset going forward, then I think they have a good chance.
Now, out of those 4 losses that you mentioned, some pretty tough teams in there, are there any that you think might be more winnable than others for the Hoosiers?
I would say the Purdue game. It's the last home game of the season. IU's showing that they can kind of hang with Purdue. Stefan, you were at that game. They took Purdue to 5 sets and had a real chance to win that game. And I don't think it's going to be the home opener of Wilkinson Hall, but it's been talked about that might happen. I think the odds of that happening are slim, though. But either way, they've shown they can hang with Purdue. So if they're going to get anyone, I think it's going to be Purdue in that last home game.
And if you look at it, the one win-over ranked opponent they do have was against Michigan in a rematch. Match at home also to throw on top of it, and another match that they battled with the Wolverines for 5 sets up in Michigan. Almost pulled that one off. Only lost 16-14 in the 5th set. Had a real chance to win that one, but couldn't finish the job. Come back to Bloomington, end up outplaying the Wolverines for most of the match, winning in 4 sets. So if you're looking at a trail for the Hoosiers to follow, maybe that's it.
Let's get back on track a little bit here. Stefan, what do you think the postseason outlook is for the Hoosiers?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it too, but I think I'll agree with Matt on this one, is that I just don't think they're right there to make the NCAA tournament. But, I mean, they've shown signs that next year those are realistic expectations for the team. When you look at what the Big Ten has to offer, the rest of the schedule is so hard. I mean, even IU beat Northwestern earlier this year, and I'm still looking at that game at Northwestern. It's not an easy win for IU. I mean, we've seen Ohio State, who's a bottom feeder in the Big Ten right now. They beat Penn State. So Big Ten teams are all very capable, and they're all beating up on each other. So to look at IU's schedule, I mean, it's fair to say that you could think they could beat Purdue at home, but at the same time, that's still a top 15 team. And just because they took them 5 sets once doesn't mean they can come back and beat them. So I don't think they have what it takes quite yet to get over that hump to make the NCAA tournament. But it's certainly going to be interesting because, as we mentioned, Ohio State beating Penn State, certain teams upsetting each other. I mean, IU could be that team that pulls off an upset. Who's to say that they can't go into Wisconsin and Minnesota and pull it off? I mean, we saw Michigan beat Wisconsin in Wisconsin, and now IU beat Michigan. So by the transitive property, they have a good chance. They have a good chance of going in and beating Wisconsin. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But right now, I just don't think they're quite there yet.
I love judging by transitive property, but yeah, I'm with you guys. Indiana's schedule is just so demanding, and Steve Aird knows it. He's said it multiple times in pressers. That's just life in the Big Ten. You got to learn how to get used to it. But it's okay. It's hard to say it's okay if you miss a tournament. But for IU this year, they've made such big strides. It's not the end of the world if you miss the NCAA tournament because of how many strides that they've made, and honestly, that they're in the position to where there can be a legitimate case that they're disappointed they don't make the tournament. Says all you need to know about this year's team.
All right, well, plenty more to come on the toss-up. We'll go ahead and take a break right here, but coming up, our panel will play Make Your Case, and we'll have our lightning round. So stick with us. Welcome back to the toss-up. We're talking IUVB. Before we continue, let's toss it over to reporter extraordinaire Meredith Struing at the media wall. Meredith?
Thanks, Austin. The freshman class for IU volleyball is not only delivering results that make Coach Aird happy, but are on track to beat records set before them. Outside hitter Brianna Edwards, who was a Max Preps All-American, has a wide range that she uses very effectively to hit on both the right side and the outside. She leads the Hoosiers in kills with 284, which is the most for an IU freshman since 2009, when Jordan Haverly set the record with 446 kills. Add Edwards' 22 solo blocks with her kill number, and you've got an aggressive competitor who makes very few errors. Looking now to freshman Lexi Johnson, she posted double-digit kills in back-to-back matches and had 10 kills in the Rutgers victory. The Notre Dame Prep Offensive Player of the Year posted 8 kills and hit a .368 in the sweep against Ohio State. And it's not just the hitters making the news. In the 3-1 victory over Michigan, freshman Abigail Westenhofer posted her first career double-double with 30 assists and 12 digs. She's right behind IU junior Victoria Brizak with 456 set assists this season. Her serving continues to improve, securing 12 serve aces, the 4th highest on the team. Even though the 5'10 setter is smaller than many of her teammates, her athletic ability to constantly track the ball and anticipate its every move is what makes her a standout on the team. The freshmen wearing the cream and crimson are quickly rising in the ranks, adding more numbers to their stat sheet every day. Austin, guys, back to you.
Thanks, Meredith. All right, now we're going to go ahead. We're going to play Make Your Case. You guys are all vets. I don't really need to explain the rules to you guys, but I'm going to give you a statement. You're going to tell me why or why not this thing is true. We're going to play a little devil's advocate to start off. Tell me why this IU volleyball team is an NCAA tournament caliber team.
Well, if they are an NCAA tournament caliber team, it's because of how they've hung with the top teams in the Big Ten. The Big Ten, without any doubt in anyone's mind, is the toughest conference in the country. And they have consistently hung with some of the best teams in that conference. At Ann Arbor, they hung with Michigan, hung with Michigan State the night before, and both went 5 sets. They hung with Minnesota for a stretch here in Bloomington. They didn't really maintain that for a very long time, but they've shown throughout the season that they can kind of hang around with the top teams. And I think if you can hang around with them, then at some point you're going to get one. They got Michigan, and if they hang around again, maybe they'll get another one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that all season has been going up against some of the best teams. I mean, even when you look at non-conference play, they're not playing against small schools. They're playing against Cincinnati. They're playing against teams like Texas A&M and Temple. So this is a team that's been going up against good teams. In non-conference, they looked really strong, and even though that was early on the season. And then in Big Ten play, I mean, if you look at RPI right now, they're on the bubble. That just goes to show how good the Big Ten is, because this team is below 500 in conference play, yet has a strong RPI. I mean, they're going up against some of the best athletes in the world in some of these matches and competing with them, and their defense has hung in with some of them. Their offense has looked shaky at times, but has improved. So I think if you really wanted to make a case for this team making a tournament, you have to look at the Big Ten and say that, hey, they might be struggling in the Big Ten, but they're a lot better than so-and-so is playing in whatever conference. So, I mean, the Big Ten schedule itself is so tough that you got to give IU consideration.
Yeah, you know what helps at RPI too? Playing a lot of really good teams down the stretch, and Indiana's going to do that. And it's a double-edged sword because obviously it's harder to win those games, but if they do pull 1 or 2, dare I say even 3 upsets, then you're right in the mix of the discussion, because you're not just getting wins, you're getting really quality wins. Maybe that Michigan match could be a little bit of a turning point for them, because they were able to get over the hump against the ranked team. They had some near misses, as Matt said earlier. Also, Illinois, another top team, they had a 2-0 lead, couldn't hold that one. So maybe that got them over the hump, and I know Steve Aird doesn't like to view it this way, but as maybe a little bit of a confidence builder to where maybe now they can move forward and get a couple more big wins as the season comes to a close.
Yeah, and even going off of that, I mean, you got to assume that they're going to have to beat Northwestern and Iowa, the lesser teams, and
those aren't even easy.
Those aren't even easy, yeah. And then pull off 1 or 2 against Purdue. I'm blanking now.
Nebraska,
Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Yeah, so they're going to have to pull off some of those and take care of those bottom feeders, so to say.
All right, well, Jack, back to you. On the flip side, why is this not a tournament caliber team?
Well, back to the schedule, because it's so brutal. I don't think they're going to be able to win enough of these games against elite competition to be able to make the tournament. And as I said earlier, that's okay. Indiana's made a lot of big strides. It's just it's a lot to ask for a team, first-year coaching staff, trying to establish the culture, which Steve Aird's done a phenomenal job of, and just taking a team that had such an abysmal year last year and drag them all the way to the tournament in one season. It's almost an impossible task, but if anyone can do it, it looks like Steve Aird could be that guy.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I just don't think they're quite there yet. I mean, they're going into these 5-set matches with some of the best teams in the nation, but when it comes down to a 5th set, when push comes to shove, usually it's the better athletes and a better team that comes out prevailing. I think we saw that at Purdue. We saw that with Illinois, that when these teams get serious and realize that, hey, Indiana's not here messing around, we're not just going to roll past them, that they do step it up a notch and kind of pull through at the end. And I think that's just what's going to hurt IU here at the stretch because, I mean, Minnesota and Wisconsin, they're playing meaningful games as well. I mean, this is no longer a early season game against IU. This is a late season game with a lot of tournament implications even for these better teams. So teams aren't going to be sleeping up on IU anymore, and they're not going to let IU sneak up on them and pull off an upset. So that's just what I think down the stretch. I just don't think they're there quite yet.
The lack of depth also has hurt IU, especially
Sure.
in some of those 5-set matches. Steve Aird's talked a lot about it. It's just kind of hard to deal with when you're in your first season trying to build up the depth that just isn't there right now for a squad.
That's actually exactly what I was going to talk about. Thanks for stealing my answer, Jeff.
Anytime.
I mean, like the schedule's so tough, but I think just beyond the schedule, when you're playing these teams that top to bottom have talent all across their rosters, and maybe their bottom players are much better than IU's bottom players, that's going to hurt you in the long run because in those 5-set matches, at some point you're going to tire out. And we've seen IU start to kind of lose gas in some of those 5-set matches, and because they don't have the same top to bottom talent level, that's going to hurt them. And I think that could be a reason why they don't get some of these upsets, which again, they are still upsets against top 15 teams. So to say, oh, they didn't get an upset, like just terrible, I think that's really unfair to say, but just the depth of this team could definitely hurt them down the stretch.
Now, what was the turning point for the Hoosiers over the course of this season?
I think it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but I think Kendall Bierman's injury is actually a turning point for them in this season because they had to reorganize the whole lineup. The team became what it is now as soon as Kendall Bierman got hurt. People like Cameron Malloy had to step into much bigger roles, and people like Brianna Edwards have stepped up, Daisha Lofton have stepped up. So the team's kind of rallied around. I mean, you lose your best player. That hurts. But when you rally around them and kind of work more as a team and not just relying on Kendall Bierman to make the big play, and you have so many other people, Lexi Johnson's kind of emerging later in the season against Michigan. She was really fantastic. So I think as we see the season go on without Kendall Bierman, we've seen the team emerge into what it is now.
This is a very specific point of the season, but first home game against Northwestern, IU wins the first set, loses the second one, comes out and wins the third set. I think that's the turning point of the season because after they lost the second set, you could kind of feel in you, Jim, that it was like, all right, like Aaron hyped up this whole thing, but it's just going to be the same thing again. They come out, they win the third set, end up being Northwestern. You're thinking, okay, this team was 1-19 last year. They're already 1-0 in Big Ten play. So I think winning that set kind of right away set the mentality that, hey, we're not the team we were last year. This isn't the culture that we had last year. We're going to try to establish something different. And whether or not that results in a tournament appearance or something this year or some great results this year doesn't really matter at this point. I think that coming back and winning that third set right away early in the season kind of established what Air wanted to bring this year. And it just came a little earlier than I expected. But that moment right there, I think, was the turning point this year.
Well, Matt, I know how you feel now. Now, just for the sake of differentiating things, I'll go with when they were able to come back and sweep Ohio State at home, completing a season sweep against them. First time they had done that in over a decade. That just shows it shows a growing point for the program of, okay, we've done something IU hasn't done in a long time. We can now do more stuff that IU hasn't done in a long time. And the Michigan match, it could be another example that if they're able to rattle off a couple big victories and make the tournament, you could point at that match being, okay, that's the first time they were able to beat a ranked opponent. Maybe that's a turning point.
All right, well, now it's time to see if you guys have picked up on that Steve Aird speed a little bit. It's our lightning round. The only rule is that your answers have to be less than 10 seconds. Matt, we'll start with you. Who's the team MVP for the Hoosiers?
Daisha Lofton, she's kind of taken leadership of this team and has been one of the keys on the floor with Kendall Bierman out.
I'll say Bailey Lebo. I mean, she's almost breaking the single season digs record for IU, and she's been an anchor on that defense.
Cam Malloy, she's done such a great job filling in since Bierman came out. She's the Swiss Army knife for the team.
All right, we're sitting here. It's the end of the season. How far have the Hoosiers gone?
I mean, it's almost hard to say. They've gone from literally the bottom to possibly an NCAA tournament consideration. It's astounding.
I think they're a team that's sitting at home watching the tournament, but at the same time, Team Dale feels very confident in what they've been able to establish and confident going forward into next year.
Yeah, I don't think they end up making the NCAA tournament, but they should put themselves squarely in position to make the big dance next year.
Last question. As of right now, what is your report card grade for the Hoosiers?
A, almost even an A+. This team went 1-19 in the conference last year, and again, they're in consideration for NCAA tournament play. Whether or not they make it, to go that far is incredible.
Yeah, I'll say A, because last time I was on here talking volleyball, I said they wouldn't crack the top 10 of the Big Ten. I think Steve Aird heard that or something, took it to heart. So, I mean, I've been skeptical so far, so maybe they do end up making a tournament appearance. But based on what I expect to come into the season, I'll give them an A.
Yeah, you got to give them an A just because of how far this team has come in such a short amount of time.
Well, as we wind down here a little bit, we've had a lot of discussion. What is your final word on IU volleyball?
Steve Aird.
Just Aird.
That works still.
I'll say opportunity.
Rising.
Well, that does it for our show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Facebook page at IUSTV Sports and follow us on Twitter at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.